Bring in show music, please.
This is Squawk Pod, and I'm CNBC producer Cameron Costa. On today's episode, keeping up with the Trump administration, tariffs on foreign steel, retaliatory tariffs from China, possible irregularities at the Treasury, and of course, Doge's efforts to gain access to Treasury systems, and a federal judge's effort to block it.
All of this is going to play out in the courts.
All of this is going to play out in the courts.
And what's really going on at the White House between the president and his billionaire employee? National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett says there's only one chief executive in charge.
Elon Musk is in the office next to me. He's not in control.
Plus, it's a victory for the Eagles. EDO President Kevin Krim runs through who won and who lost the Super Bowl commercials.
There was a raft of Gen AI ads that did not perform.
It's Monday, February 10th, 2025, and Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We are live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin. We're back at home downstairs.
We are. Back in the studio.
Back in beautiful Times Square.
Beautiful Times Square.
Or Times Square.
Nothing much happening.
Snowy.
So far.
Snowy Times
Slushy.
Square. A little bit.
No Elmo sightings yet. Although I saw him on a commercial.
I did too. That was a great commercial, actually. It was the
talking to-
On. He was talking to Roger Federer.
Roger Federer.
Which was very clever because On doesn't look like On. It looks like he's right.
I think he said like CQ or
QC.
QC.
Yeah, it does. He's right.
Meantime, President Trump expected to announce a new 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports into the U.S. The president gave a preview of what's to come yesterday on board Air Force One on his way to the Super Bowl.
We'll also be announcing steel tariffs on Monday.
Tomorrow?
Monday, tomorrow.
What countries will those go on?
Everybody, steel.
Including Canada and Mexico?
Yeah,
That exempt?
any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
What about aluminum?
Aluminum, too.
Shares of American steel and aluminum producers are rising this morning on the back of that news. Largest sources of steel imports are Canada, Brazil, and Mexico. Now, President Trump also planned to announce reciprocal tariffs on Tuesday or Wednesday. These will apply to all U.S. trading partners. And while we're on the topic, if we will, of metals, Nippon Steel not commenting on President Trump's statement on Friday that the Japanese the steel maker's bid, I should say, for U.S. steel would be in the form of an investment instead of a purchase. The Japanese officials saying that Nippon Steel is proposing a bold change in plans when it comes to U.S. steel. So we're going to have to watch and see what happens there.
Yeah. As expected, China imposed retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. The tariffs will hit about $14 billion worth of goods. Beijing taking that action after the U.S. added a 10% tariff on China's products. And China, in this case, is targeting liquefied gas, coal, crude oil, and farm equipment, along with some automotive products. Oil prices, though, moving higher this morning.
And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has been ordered to halt all supervision. OMB Director and now acting CFPB Director Russell Vought telling employees to work remotely at the headquarters in Washington, which has been closed. On Saturday, Vought issued a notice that demanded employees cease all supervision and examination activity. Vought also notified the Federal Reserve that the CFPB will not be taking its next draw of unappropriated funding. Last week, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called on the agency to not start any new investigations or approve or issue final rules.
Now on to Doge. Elon Musk called for the federal judge that temporarily blocked his team from the Treasury Department's payment system to be impeached. The court precluded officials without proper background checks and security clearances from accessing the payment system through at least next Friday, including political appointees and special government appointees affiliated with Musk's Doge team. 19 Democratic state attorney generals sued President Trump. They say that he violated constitutional law by giving Musk access to the Treasury Department. Vice President J.D. Vance suggested the judge acted illegally and is not allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. So that is a legal case that's going to continue.
All of this is going to play out in the courts.
All of this is going to play out in the courts. And as we've said, if it's a read-only situation, you'd hope that would actually be good, because we got to get to the bottom of all of these costs. Yeah. The bad news is if you think that they're being taken and potentially becomes a national security threat in some way, or gets put into some kind of AI system that then gets you. Well, that's where.
There are questions about security with it, and then there are questions about whether the executive branch has the authority to shut down offices or appropriations that have come from Congress. And this has been a long-running battle.
But to me, that's different than finding out.
Doesn't this only go till Friday? What the judge said?
Yes, and there are other lawsuits that have been brought, and eventually it's going to be taken up by the Supreme Court, would be my guess. Yeah.
Right. But what happens Friday?
There's some other lawsuit I think that is pending that is expected to come up. So, but yes, you will anticipate that all of this will be decided by the Supreme Court.
All right, let's get to some other headlines from President Trump in an interview ahead of the Super Bowl. Eamon Javers joins us now with more. Hey, Eamon.
Hey, good morning, Joe. You're right. President Trump was very busy yesterday, including this interview with Fox News' Bret Baier that aired in the pre-Super Bowl hype on Fox yesterday. Bret Baier asked the president if he trusts Elon Musk. Here's what he said.
Trust Elon? Oh, he's not gaining anything. In fact, I wonder how he can devote the time to it. He's so into it. But I told him do that. Then I'm going to tell him very soon, like maybe in 24 hours, to go check the Department of Education. He's going to find the same thing. Then I'm going to go to the military. Let's check the military. We're going to find billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud and abuse. But I campaigned on this, Brad.
And separately from that interview, as you guys have been talking about, President Trump talked to reporters on Air Force One and said he is going to put those tariffs on steel and aluminum, 25% on inbound steel and aluminum from anywhere in the world. He also said he's going to announce reciprocal tariffs this week on countries that tax U.S. imports. Those, he said, would go into effect almost immediately. The president raised an issue with treasuries, and we're not exactly clear on what he's talking about. But take a listen to this, because this could have some real impact for the Treasury Department and maybe the Treasury market later on today. Here's what he said.
We're even looking at treasuries. There could be a problem. You've been reading about that with treasuries. And that could be an interesting problem, because it could be that a lot of those things don't count. In other words, that some of that stuff that we're finding is very fraudulent. Therefore, maybe we have less debt than we thought of. Think of that.
So very fraudulent, the president says. Something in the Treasury market, or the way treasuries were issued, he's suggesting some of the Doge team has found some kind of issue with fraud in the Treasury market, and that might suggest that the U.S. has less debt than we thought of. Not clear what the president's talking about there, or what that could look like, but it just raises the question of whether the president's going to try to cancel some U.S. debt, arguing that the initial treasuries that were issued were in some way fraudulent, or there was fraud in the Treasury market. That's going to raise a lot of questions for Scott Bessent and the team over at the Treasury Department today. A lot of people in that vast liquid Treasury market are going to have some question marks over their heads listening to that and trying to figure out what the president meant throughout the day today, guys. Back over to you.
Eamon, I have a complete curveball question for you. It's Super Bowl related, but it's money related and it's Trump related. So I thought it was very exciting to see the president at the Super Bowl. And my kids thought it was exciting.
I thought it was very exciting to see the Eagles win the Super Bowl, by the way.
And then, one of my sons said to me, why has the president never gone before? And so we start to look this up. And apparently many years ago, there was a question about the cost of going to the Super Bowl because of the amount of security that's required. And we were trying to do the math. Can you help us do the math of what do you think it costs, given that we're talking about Doge and everything else? And look, we can make a subjective call about whether it's worth it or not. I actually think it's a pretty good thing for the country. But what do you think the cost of it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's probably, millions, plural, of dollars for the president to go there. Just operating Air Force One is expensive, right? So then when you deal with the security, the additional
apparently $200,000 an hour just to keep the plane in the air.
Right, exactly. So you're talking millions of dollars for that. And the president left, by the way, right around halftime. He didn't stay for the whole game. He had to beat the post-Super Bowl traffic just like everybody else, I guess. But it's an expensive thing. It's always expensive to move the president, and the country sort of just buys into this deal where we agree that we're going to move presidents around wherever they want to go, and they're going to use their discretion to do that in the national interest. And you can argue, about presidential vacations over the years have become controversial, presidential trips that are political versus doing the business of the country. That's been a debate over the years. In the end, though, Andrew, the deal is the president gets to go where he wants to go, and he sort of waves the flag and uses his personal presence as a leader of the country at his own discretion, and that's kind of it. People can chip away at that and make arguments, but we've never had anyone be able to, in Congress or anywhere else, be able to curtail presidential travel by arguing that it's too expensive.
All right. Thanks, Eamon.
The Philadelphia Eagles are the Super Bowl champs. The Eagles beat the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs 40-22, ruined their chances of trying to make it a three-peat. But, folks, this game was over pretty much at halftime. Philadelphia led 24-0. They completely dominated. I think the biggest lead you've ever seen at halftime in the Super Bowl.
27-0.
I think it was 25-0.
27 at one point.
25 at halftime was the biggest lead you've ever seen in a Super Bowl.
Right,
before.
and then I saw some of the third quarter, and then got up at one point and checked.
Watched the last 2.5 minutes. I watched till they dumped
It's not 40-22. I've never seen a pass rush dominate an offensive line like that in my entire. But the guys are all 6'6".
Jalen Hurts, the quarterbacks.
They're 6'6", 330.
333, I think, up from 6'2" and 240-something points when the Super Bowl began.
I mean, I don't think Tom Brady standing back there could have done any better than. Although Mahomes,
I don't think it was Mahomes' fault.
He definitely had some happy. He had some happy feet there.
But there was so much pressure from the Eagles.
Got hit. He was either. I mean, it was.
He was scrambling. He was getting the ball.
A couple of times I was watching Kelsey too, who we think of him as a receiver. The guy just walked right by Kelsey a couple of times and just zeroed in on Mahomes. It was painful to watch. It was a crappy game.
It was painful to watch unless you're an Eagles fan. In which case.
Oh yeah, Eagles fans loved it. But as a game to watch,
it wasn't a great
with
game.
all the hype to watch, and we always hype it for 2 weeks. We go nuts. For 2 weeks.
It was crazy to see Mahomes dominated like that, though. I mean, it
was his line that was dominated.
Yeah,
It really would. But and even the passes that were like so uncharacteristic of behind
lots
guys
of interceptions. And then one time it got knocked out of his hand from behind him in the second half. Jalen Hurts anyway was the MVP of the game.
But Saquon, I mean, the Chiefs focused on Saquon.
And as a result, everybody else was able to come around and play. He threw 2 TDs. This is going back to Jalen Hurts. I like the Elmo ad.
I have to keep pinching. I have to keep reminding I don't watch ads, so I'll be there and oh shit, I'm supposed to be watching these ads. I'm supposed to be watching them.
The long version of Duncan.
That was good.
Which you didn't get to see on even on the show.
That wasn't the long version?
There's a 6.5-minute version. For those of you doing what do they call it, 2 screens now? Screen and screen. Yeah. You can watch it on YouTube right now. It's awesome. It's like a movie. It's like a mini movie. It's pretty great. I got a lot of flack for saying that I liked the Pfizer commercial.
Oh, I actually did like that too.
Which I thought was great.
The Pfizer cancer commercial.
Now they're a cancer company. I like that
because people seem
they're not they're not the leading cancer. They've never been.
No, but the idea that they're hoping to make.
Forget about what we did before.
I thought it was a great commercial. On the merits of the commercial,
it was duplicitous.
It was a tearjerker to see a child with cancer being able to come home.
Well, that'll work every time.
The Google one was pretty good.
Did you see Bill Murray?
I did see Bill.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what the hell was going on.
Well,
we went on.
Apparently, it's a real email address.
Yeah, you can go.
Yeah.
Right.
We got to go.
We could talk about ChatGPT. Did you see that?
I did see that.
I thought that was interesting. And then what about did you see all the speculation online about this Musk ad that never happened?
Didn't see that.
That's what I was looking for.
No. The toilet paper ad was pretty good.
There was this whole sort of conspiratorial view that somehow Musk was going to buy millions of dollars of ads to literally line by line show you everything that he's discovered under Doge.
Oh, that would have been
And there were these people online going crazy.
Why does he need to do it? He's got his own thing he can do it for free on.
On Twitter, that's what I found.
Cheese will be next.
Next on Squawk Pod, Elon Musk's Doge has ruffled feathers in Washington and across the rest of the country. We dig into the Trump-sanctioned changes afoot with National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett.
Why is everybody so anxious and upset about the fact that we're going to get to the bottom of what we're spending our money on? Why is that a partisan thing? Why are we making up fake things about what Elon's doing? Because we're trying to just see where the money's going.
This is Squawk Pod with Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Here's Joe.
Our next guest joins us on President Trump's vow now to impose new tariffs on steel and aluminum. The White House's reaction to Friday's softer than expected jobs report and much more. Let's welcome White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. It's good to see you, Kevin.
Good to see you, my friend. I'm glad you're feeling better. I missed you last
feeling
week.
Good.
Yeah, good.
Feeling good. Got some adjusting, but I didn't need that organ.
Can we talk about the Treasury letter first? I know we were talking about something else, but you guys just showed it to me. I'd like to respond to it if you don't mind.
I figured you would. I barely said anything, but I got in my 2 cents anyway from all of our nonpartisan civil servants at the Justice Department and all those federal agencies. But go ahead, Kevin.
You remember all those CIA guys that lost their security clearances? This letter reminds me of that. There's so much misinformation in it. Let's just make it clear. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, is in charge of the Treasury. The Treasury Secretary has found that the controls for spending of the previous administration were unacceptable, that they were sending money out without knowing where the money was going. They were sending money out without flagging, what it was for. They didn't check before they sent the money out whether it was appropriated. And as we go in and look, we're finding lots of things that shouldn't have been sent.
Wait, so things that weren't appropriated? Kevin, that's a big deal.
It could, the point is they could be appropriated, but there was no guarantee. They weren't putting in a control to make sure it was appropriated even. So Kevin, you've got to add up all because they're sending you checks like 50 at a time, 30 at a time, 70 at a time. And so they're not saying, oh, yeah, this adds up to this, and so that's why you can send it now. And so there's a lot of work to be done to clean that up. Treasury Secretary's doing it. I think, Elon Musk is in the office next to me. He's not in control. That's the other thing I want to say. This idea that there's a puppet master telling the Treasury Secretary what to do, and therefore all the Treasury Secretaries need to be alarmed. That's just left-wing media, poppycock. It's just not true.
Can I just clarify that we're questioning the controls, not whether or not the money was actually appropriated. We don't know that for sure, but that's what this is about.
But if you don't have controls, you have to then add up what you spent and make sure that it was aligned with what was appropriated, and they weren't even doing that.
Hey, Kevin, here's the question that I would ask, which is I would imagine most, if not all Americans, support the idea of looking at where money's going, making sure it gets to the right places, making sure fraud and abuse and all of that is happening, that it is eliminated. I don't think there's any question about that.
Right.
I think the question mark right now is about the transparency of this particular process around the individuals who are engaged and involved in this particular activity, whether they have clearance, whether they've been vetted, how that's worked, and what kind of transparency that there is around that process. I would only just say that to the extent that, and I think you and I actually agree a lot about what needs to happen here, and I imagine that actually the Treasury Secretaries who wrote that letter or that op-ed agree with what needs to happen. Maybe they don't, I don't know.
There are a lot of good
but I think it would help enormously
for
the credibility of the entire exercise so that all Americans feel really good about it, that there's a little bit more transparency around the individuals who are participating in it, where it's being fed in terms of AI and other things that makes people nervous. All of that, could that be done to try to actually make everybody get behind what you're doing?
Yeah, thanks for that. And I'll give you some transparency. Okay, so what's going on is that we have antiquated computer systems that make it hard for people to do their jobs and follow up the things that taxpayers and these former Treasury Secretaries want them to do. And I don't know how many exact DOGE employees there are in the Treasury Department. You could ask the Treasury Secretary, but I don't think you could count them on one hand. And they're just helping people get good computer systems so that we can check and see what the numbers really are. And the point is, why is everybody so anxious and upset about the fact that we're going to get to the bottom of what we're spending our money on? Why is that a partisan thing? Why are we making up fake things about what Elon's doing? Because we're trying to just see where the money's going. And I think it's probably in the end we're going to find that a lot of money went to bad places.
You're wondering why there's a lot of people who don't know where the money was. You're really is that a rhetorical question?
If you're hiding where the money, if you're hiding where the money's going, then how come? How come?
I think I can think of a lot of reasons a lot of people would be not wanting.
So the one thing I'd like to say is you guys should start a poll. I can't do this. I'm a government official. Of over/under on how much money that Scott Bessent finds that's actually spent that was misspent. Just you guys should start it.
Fraudulently?
Well, Kevin,
or
help
at least
us.
more than appropriated.
It's
going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. But we have other stuff to talk about, guys. I know you want to talk about steel tariffs before I've gone to.
Can I just ask one other question, which is, we are seeing that some of these payments, and we're looking and going, oh, these payments don't seem to make sense. For example, I will use just one example, and I'm not picking on them. I know they're a competitor of ours, but Bloomberg, people looked at these Bloomberg subscriptions and said, why does the government have Bloomberg subscriptions? And I thought to myself, I want a Kevin Hassett to have a Bloomberg terminal if he needs it. And I would want someone at the Treasury Department who's selling treasuries and bonds to have access to a terminal. And so I only say that because I think there's some nuance to what we're seeing. There are going to be subscriptions and other things that people may have questions about, but there is probably a need for some form of information. I would actually be upset if you didn't have it.
But even on this one, okay, so let's just go inside baseball. That I've found that even like within the complex that we had too many of those subscriptions. And I think it's completely sensible to have a few guys that really know how to get the answer quick to more senior people so that you could aggregate demands for information from that.
I agree.
So
I'm just
specifically
saying
on
the idea
that
of just
matter that you talked about, we're saving the taxpayers' money. I just want you to know.
Look, if ultimately you get rid of most of the subscriptions, but you still have enough, that's fine too.
That's what we're doing.
The money's eventually going to end up in Mike Bloom lining his pocket so he can do more climate change, hysteria, and gun control. Yeah, come on.
He's done some amazing things for this country and for the city.
Blah, blah, blah. All right.
Oh, but come on. I mean, I think even you would agree that he's done amazing things for this country.
Remember when we had his campaign guy and say, just wait till this really takes off? He peaked at about 1.5%. So I don't know. The rest of the country didn't feel quite as
tariffs? Can we get to tariffs before?
I want to talk about steel tariffs. That's why
Kevin's going to let me keep going. Go ahead, Kevin. Does it make sense?
Okay. Yeah. So President Trump has made it clear that an important part of an America First golden age is steel production. And when we put the steel tariffs in last time, you might go back and look right after the steel tariffs went in. It didn't cause manufacturing to go down. In fact, manufacturing jobs the next couple of years went up about 120,000 jobs right after the steel tariffs came in. And we could talk about why. And then under President Biden last year, we lost 100,000 jobs. And one of the things that's happened is that there was a lot of increased steel capacity after the steel tariffs came in, which, remember, were put in there so that if in case of war, we can have the steel we need to fight a war. That's what the president said. It was a 232 decision. And so steel capacity went way up. And then all of a sudden there's waivers for this and waivers for that. There's hundreds of thousands of waivers. And so that the steel tariffs that were so effective before have been overwhelmed with waivers. And so President Trump, as he can do, is like, okay, so let's just stop the waivers. And he'll do so at a time of his choosing. The order is not out yet, but he said to us and on Air Force One that this is a high priority to make sure that America is ready for whatever may come in the future and that we've got a strong and vibrant steel industry.
So how are you going to even the playing field? You talk about tax reciprocity around the world, and the president Trump is obsessed with balance of payments wherever they are. Some people don't think that. I mean, we're a wealthy country. We're not going to change our balance. We're definitely going to consume more than most of our trading partners because we're able to. Kevin, is that the metric we should be using to decide whether there's an imbalance and whether we need tariffs from Mexico or for Canada or wherever?
The reciprocity, there are different ways to think about reciprocity, but if we're talking specifically about tariffs, just recall that almost every trading partner has much higher tariffs than we do. In fact, the only trading partner that's about where we are, and there's Canada and Mexico who are part of the trade deal, but outside of that, the UK has about the same tariff we do. The EU it's 2 to 3% higher. Taiwan it's 10 or 11%, and India, and we're meeting Modi soon, has got a lot to talk about with the president because they have tariffs that I think the trade weighted average is a little bit short of 20. Now I'm running it out of my head, so don't give me a Pinocchio. But they have high rates that are enormously high. They're lockout rates, and so President Trump believes that at the very least everybody should agree that if they're charging us 20, then we should charge them 20, and then if they go down, we'll go down. But that's the idea of reciprocity in the tariff space.
Hey, Kevin, can I just ask you, yesterday, President Trump said something on Air Force One on his way to the Super Bowl about how maybe there was something at Treasury where we didn't have as much debt as we thought. Is that referring to debt that's already been issued that we might recall or say isn't needed, or is it more akin to what you were talking about at the top, which is...
It was the top. It was the top. As we're getting, back in the day, radiologists used to say you're getting a wet read, right? Like they'd get the film out and then they'd look up and they say, oh boy, it doesn't look so good for Kevin. Well, the wet read is a lot of money. And we'll see. We've got to get to the bottom of it, but it could be that there is a lot of money being spent that doesn't need to be, and that wasn't appropriated, so therefore it'll reduce the debt when we uncover and stop those payments.
President comes up with a lot of stuff. Some of it seems a little bit impromptu. If you add all the tax on tips, tax on Social Security, extend the tax cuts, take off the cap on Social Security, you add it all up, and in your previous life, you might be pulling your hair out, Kevin. There's a lot of stuff that would be...
I think that everything that you just talked about, I spoke with him before he said it, while he was sitting in a car somewhere on the campaign
trail. You don't think that it's not all possible without running up a big deficit, is it?
Well, it depends on what we do with spending, and it depends what we do with taxes. But the thing I could say, Joe, is that the president understands that if you want inflation to go down, which is one of his highest, if not his highest priority, incomes the first couple of years under Biden dropped $2,000 per person after going up $6,000 per family under President Trump because of the inflation. So he wants inflation under control. To do that, you have to increase supply and reduce aggregate demand. So you got to cut spending and you got to increase supply. And the way you increase supply is you lower the marginal tax rate on labor and you lower the marginal tax rate on new investments. And so for labor, if you look at the people who aren't working who really want to be, it's people who have really ridiculously high Social Security tax rates. If we've got somebody who can work more overtime, that's increased labor supply. That helps them make a higher income and it helps reduce inflation because we have more supply. So President Trump's strategy is 100% sensible, and it's all about fighting inflation and just delivering prosperity.
100%.
Again, as opposed to 100%. 100%. Okay. So maybe there's something he talked about once that was about something else. He does go on, but I'm telling you that when we talk economics, our objective is increase supply. We want increased supply and lower aggregate demand. That'll give us, wealth for the people, wages for the people, and lower inflation. And that's what I mean. That's 100% is what the strategy is.
I mean, he's told Bret Baier he really is serious about Canada as the 51st state. There are some things that you're laughing, but are there times where you're coming up with ways to defend some things that seem a little bit maybe outlandish?
When the U.S. was founded, how many states did we have?
Hey, Kevin.
Curious, how many do we have now? And so is it outlandish? Is it outlandish to dream
some
of a bigger
it seems a little
States?
outlandish.
I don't think so.
I mean,
so it's
like
crazy to let Hawaii and Alaska come. It's just crazy. It's outlandish that we brought Alaska in.
Canada's really mad.
I got one for you, Kevin.
But I think he's telling you that they are serious.
How do you feel about, Mike Lee took to X yesterday and said that he wants Ron Paul to be the Fed chair, and your new roomie, Elon Musk, who's next door to you, apparently, said this would be amazing. How do you feel about Ron Paul in the role of Fed chair?
I love Senator Paul, and President Trump will decide who the Fed chair is when...
No, Ron, not Rand. Ron.
Yeah, we're talking about Ron.
Okay. I thought you said Rand. Yeah. Okay, Ron Paul. Well, okay. Well, the president, if he decides Ron Paul, then we'll understand why he decides that.
It sounds like when you're not necessarily on board with that. Okay, Kevin. Thank you.
Kevin, he's
a good sport. That's the thing.
We're all good sports. We have to be. We have to be because we're talking about things that. I like it. We're in the news business.
That is true.
Kevin Hassett, I need you a lot to come on. I do.
Of course.
You make me seem normal. Thank you. See you later.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, taking a look at the best and the worst performing ads from last night's Super Bowl with EDO President and CEO Kevin Krim.
These popularity contests are just that. But what drives actual behaviors from consumers, things like people searching for the brand, going to the brand's website, using the brand's app, those are investment grade signals of what's going to happen to the demand for those businesses and those products in the future.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod.
You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC. We'll call it the day after the Super Bowl. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick. How many people are calling out sick this morning is always the question. Today is the highest sick day rate of the year.
And
so
for those of us who show up, there's not a whole lot of productivity.
That's a separate matter.
Last night's Super Bowl had advertisers paying almost $8 million for a 30-second spot. Let's take a look at some of the best and worst performing with Kevin Krim, EDO Inc. President and CEO. It's a whole different mindset for me, Kevin, because a lot of times as soon as anything goes to a commercial break, I start doing something else, and it's like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be watching. I'm supposed to be watching this.
That's why the toilet paper one was the best ad. The Angel
tell me about the
one,
toilet paper.
You've got 30-second bathroom break. We're just going to pay for it. And that was the smartest ad I'd ever seen, because it's like, you can't miss the game, you can't miss the commercials.
That was very clever, and I think it did nice things for the brand.
So the ones that people like are the most effective in extending a brand or causing people to buy?
No, it's different than that.
It's different.
At EDO, what we do is we measure the outcomes generated by ads. We do that for all the major streamers like Amazon and Netflix, as well as NBC Universal, Fox, who was running the game last night, and many others, and many of the brands that were in that game last night. And what you see is these popularity contests are just that. But what drives actual behaviors from consumers, things like people searching for the brand, going to the brand's website, using the brand's app, those are investment grade signals of what's going to happen to the demand for those businesses and those products in the future.
Here's a tricky one for you. I like the Dunkin' Donuts ad. Mm-hmm. I didn't go search it. I didn't go look online, but it's for well-known brands that maybe aren't new things that are coming on. It makes sense if you're a newer brand, if you don't have as much penetration. But I think the Dunkin' ad works, and it won't necessarily show up in the online.
It works, and it was well above our average for the game last night. As was the Starbucks ad that came much later in the game when it was decisively a blowout, but it was a big offer of free coffee today, the day after the Super Bowl when we all need it. So they can both work, both those strategies. I thought what was really interesting was that the top ad in our measurement, which saw 12.6 times more engagement than the median Super Bowl ad, was T-Mobile's ad announcing its Starlink partnership. Where as consumers, if you're a T-Mobile subscriber, and for a limited time, if you're an AT&T or Verizon subscriber, you can get Starlink access so that you never hit a dead spot. And the ad showed that, paid off that practical value.
That's interesting.
With a guy standing on a cliff showing his family what he was seeing.
I thought the even bigger value prop for them, by the way, was not that it just ran during the Super Bowl, but then Elon Musk put it out on X himself. And I was thinking to myself, how much value is one tweet effectively from Musk on X?
What we see often with these Super Bowl campaigns is when you're launching a new campaign, which is what you should be doing at a Super Bowl, you're getting an amplification effect on social, and that halo drives weeks, if not months, of added lift above what you would normally see as a brand if you didn't do the Super Bowl.
But the send from him himself,
right?
That because you rarely see him actually send an ad,
right?
Almost never would he send an ad.
It's not surprising that he did it in this case.
Of course,
I mean, it's a huge moment for Starlink, where I think a lot of us are in the know about what Starlink's value prop is, but its average price is $250 a month and up for consumers. So I think for the average person, they didn't even register what Starlink could do for them because it was out of their reach.
Mm. So what else happened last night that impressed you?
Well, I thought there was two other really interesting trends. I mean, that first one about T-Mobile and Starlink is indicative of practical tech value over the speculative and often generic value of Gen AI. There was a raft of Gen AI ads that did not perform in our data from the likes of Google, from ChatGPT by OpenAI. Mm-hmm. They bought a 60-second spot. OpenAI did.
The ad.
It did not perform.
I didn't even see the Google ad.
Google did a couple different ads. They did one for their Pixel phone, which was a heartwarming spot about a father looking for his next job, and Gen AI was helping.
Well, he was a Mr. Mom.
Right, and it was helping him practice for an interview.
I remember that one.
And then they
Vaguely.
also did a national regional buy where they had their Gemini product create 50 or so different localized ads. In New York, it featured Move Fabrics. In the Bay Area, it featured Hog Island oysters. So those were clever, but didn't land with the consumer like something like T-Mobile and Starbucks. I mean, and Starlink, excuse me. And then you had another trend where there was this health curious thing going on. In our top 10, we saw a bunch of water brands hit our top 10.
Yeah.
We had Liquid Death,
Circle or whatever,
Circle, and
Liquid
Poppy.
Death was weird.
I don't even understand what that is.
They're doing
Just
with
water
pilots,
and tea?
and after
Yeah,
the
they were,
and
I think they were
school
trying to
bus
showcase that
drivers
you
saying,
can drink out of a beer can, drink water out of a beer can.
It was weird.
There's also some stupid thing that you're supposed to use that makes you drink more water. Another one of those
Right.
flavored
That was the
crazy.
Circle
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
And then you had Hims and Hers, which is a bit
I don't know what that is.
provocative. These are direct-to-consumer pharma brands.
Like ED stuff.
Like
right?
sex-
And it was GLP-1 is what they were pushing.
Oh.
And it was
Oh,
a very interesting, provocative spot. It really challenged people
we're
to
looking
think
at it, yeah.
about the obesity crisis in America and really went after the GLP-1 message in a very strong way.
You know which ad I hated at the beginning and then liked at the end was the breast cancer ad. In the beginning, where I was like, what are they possibly pitching on
Oh,
this?
that was a good one, yeah.
Totally irritated me, and then when I realized it was for, I was like, oh,
Right.
okay.
The one time you
Worthwhile.
ought to be infatuated
Yeah,
with breasts is
right.
for
It was,
early detection.
I thought, a nice way of surprising the audience and
Yeah.
delivering a really powerful message.
Better than the one where they're doing it for no reason other than to put stuff on their pits. Have you seen those?
Yes, they're actually on our air a lot, so we should
Oh,
probably not
those are good ones. Yeah, those.
Those
had-
Novartis spots both were above our median.
This has nothing to do with commercials. You probably didn't see it either, but they used AI to look at Jimmy Johnson's entire career. Did you happen to see that?
I did
on
not
Fox?
see that.
It's amazing. From when he was at, he played as a defensive back, then he was at LSU, then he brought in Terry Bradshaw. He was roommates with Jerry Jones at Arkansas, and it just went all the way through the Dallas Cowboys and the Miami Dolphins. And it was a picture of, it was Jimmy Johnson young, it was Jimmy Johnson middle-aged, it was the most amazing use of, and he was so moved, and those guys love him. Bradshaw loves him so much, and Howie Long. He's been there 30her30
Yeah.
I mean, I almost got a little.
It was a great part of the
really,
podcast, yeah.
really amazing. That was like the best thing I've seen. I mean, I hope AI is good for something, but we're waiting. But it was good in that regard. Jimmy's been on the show. He's a great guy. He's been on the show a couple times, and I think maybe he's 81 or 82. He's starting it, but Bradshaw's going to be 80.
Is he really?
Yeah, I think
still
he's
looks
78
good.
now.
Yeah, he still looks
He does look good. Those guys are. I think they. Do we have? I guess I shouldn't say that. NBC has people too, don't they? Oh, but I don't worry about NBC anymore as much. Kevin, thank you. Love you. Good.
Great to be here.
Good to have you on.
Thanks for listening to our
My free association.
I'm here anytime
never
for
unspoken
the,
thoughts.
It's our version of
I still
jazz.
care about NBC for like how long, Andrew? Do we know?
Say till to the end of this year.
To the end of this year.
I'm always
There
gonna
might be a
root for
service
him.
agreement
I'm
after that.
always
Hey,
gonna
you
root
might
for
wanna
him.
keep-
Wasn't my idea, okay?
By the
All right, I
way,
didn't ask for the divorce.
I own a bunch of Comcast stock.
You do.
I'm going
I
to root
know.
for him for forever.
Oh, good. Well, you're really flush.
Oh, boy. I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks, Kevin.
That's the podcast for today. Thank you for tuning in. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin weekday mornings on CNBC starting at 6 a.m. Eastern. To get the smartest takes and analysis from that TV show right into your ears, follow Squawk Pod wherever you're listening to your podcast now. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow. Have a great day.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.